It's amazing how desire overrides everything else. All the impossibilities just seem to fade away.
Headlines in recent times have buzzed about developments related to one of the most admired figures in the Christian ministry, Joyce Meyer. Powerful teachings and unyielding frankness have made Meyer a continuing inspiration to millions of people throughout the world. But do you know what happened to Joyce Meyer? Between upcoming conferences to controversies related to her ministry, let's take a look at the dynamic preacher and author whose livelihood has been dedicated to empowering others with faith. Shrouded by fear and turmoil, her life was clouded by the return of her father, a factory worker from World War II, and along with him, he brought back not just the scars of war but darkness that would accompany Joyce for several years. Shortly after he returned, he began assaulting her, and this experience was the secret that would destroy her childhood and shape the rest of her life. According to Joyce, her home was a place where everything moved based on the mood of her father. Anything he wanted to watch on television would become the family's choice. And they had to eat at his convenience, and there was little or no room available for joy or normalcy to exist under this oppression. Joyce admits to living a lie, concocting fabricated stories for not attending school activities and functions, when her silence and shame kept her hostage to a world no child deserved. The abuse continued relentlessly until Joyce turned 18, leaving her with profound trauma that left deep emotional scars. Feeling isolated and profoundly ashamed, not only because of what was happening to her but also of the family dynamics that set the context for everything that was going on. Her father's twisted love into a perverse thing, making her believe their relationship was special and needed to be kept from the world, and such manipulation created for Joyce a heavy burden that she would struggle to discard for many subsequent years. However, in the middle of such darkness, a flicker of hope emerged when Joyce found her refuge in her faith. Though when she was 9 years old, she became a born-again Christian, it was not until 1976 did she come across a real transformative moment. Joyce recalls driving to work, and in what she described as being drunk with the Spirit of God, she felt an overwhelming sense of love and purpose wash over her, and it was through this so pivotal an encounter that her inner fire started burning with zeal to proclaim God's message of healing and redemption. Spreading the message, the birth of Joyce Meyer Ministries. Generally, Joyce Meyer Ministries was not born out of an ambitious motive, but a call from the Lord that had been brewing inside her for years. A pivotal moment arrived in 1976 when Joyce Meyer experienced an intense, overwhelming intercession while driving to work. She felt an uncontainable fire ignite within her, compelling her to share God's love and healing with others. This transformative experience confirmed her desire to minister through home-based Bible studies and early morning gatherings with fellow believers at a local cafe. As she immersed herself deeper in church work, her gift for teaching and healing began to flourish. Her first ministry assignment was at Life Christian Center in Fenton, Missouri, where she connected with the small congregation of about 30 attendees through her teaching gift, contributing to the church's growth. By 1980, Joyce had become an associate pastor, leading women's Bible studies that drew increasingly larger crowds, solidifying her calling and ministry. As her influence grew in Life Christian Center, so grew her desire to reach more people. In 1985, after years of serving as an associate pastor of the church, she took one of the boldest steps yet. She resigned from the church and started a ministry of her own, which she called Life in the Word. This, of course, meant giving up a sure thing with the church in order to chart new territory. Again, with her faith and tenacity, she began broadcasting her teachings on various local radio stations. Her capacity to address the real-life problems of others with practical faith-based solutions captured the hearts and ears of all who listened to her. By 1983, she was able to launch a radio program of her own, something that would lay down the foundation for other successes. Almost immediately, the broadcast gained popularity, and soon, it was on several stations in the Midwest. As Life in the Word continued to grow and succeed, it led Joyce into another area of broadcast television. In 1993, at the urging of her husband, Dave Meyer, television ministry was born on superstation WGN-TV out of Chicago and later on Black Entertainment Television, or simply BET. This became, quite out of the ordinary, a very pivotal point for Joyce Meyer Ministries. What began as a strictly local outreach program for the gospel blossomed into a national one. At the beginning of the 1990s, Joyce Meyer Ministries took flight, especially by the launching of her television program, Enjoying Everyday Life, in 1993. Her gift of teaching reached millions around the world. People began watching her to be sure. They enjoyed her messages, but probably more so because of the open sincerity she shared her life's hurts and troubles, and people just related to her. On every level, the positive impact of Joyce's ministry crossed cultural boundaries. Her messages deeply touched the inner life of people from all walks of life, bringing hope and encouragement to many who were going through various trials. She gave a venue for people of faith to unite and further edify one another in their walks through conferences and speaking engagements across the United States and abroad. By 2003, Joyce Meyer Ministries had grown into a full-fledged international ministry, which tackled the humanitarian cause alongside spiritual teachings. The setup of Hand of Hope was quite instrumental. It was this aspect of the ministry that was meant to provide care and concerns for the less fortunate both in the United States and abroad. From feeding schemes to disaster relief work, Joyce's ministry was not limited to mere rhetoric but involved practical applications that were supposed to change people's lives. Setting up Hand of Hope stemmed from her own understanding of hurts, and she thus knew how important it was to attend to both spiritual and physical needs in any population. This holistic approach became one aspect of her ministerial philosophy. But with increased viewership came increased financial support to keep such an ambitious operation afloat. Joyce Meyer Ministries' meteoric rise brought hope to millions, but as the ministry's reach expanded, so did its expenses, sparking a troubling question: could it afford its own success? The price of purpose, the financial burden of running a global ministry. Initially operated out of Joyce's home, with a small staff committed to spreading the gospel through media, the early years of Joyce Meyer's ministry were characterized by limited finances, mostly dependent on donations from well-wishers who were moved by Joyce's message of hope and empowerment. During this period, the ministry's budget was tight, often hovering around $1 million annually. That amount covered basic operational costs, including equipment for radio broadcasts, printing materials, and travel expenses for Joyce as she began to speak at various events. However, as the ministry gained traction, so too did its financial requirements, and by the late 1990s, when Joyce's books began to climb the bestseller lists and her television program reached millions, the financial landscape shifted dramatically. As a result, the ministry's annual budget swelled to about $10 million, reflecting both increased operational costs and an audience that was hungry for Joyce's teachings. By the early 2000s, Joyce Meyer Ministries had become a major force in Christian media, and the costs associated with running a global ministry became more significant. Furthermore, the ministry incurred significant broadcasting expenses, including studio rentals, production, and distribution costs for television and radio programs. Additional investments were made in marketing and outreach initiatives. Moreover, organizing large-scale conferences, which attract thousands of attendees from around the world, proved to be a resource-intensive and time-consuming endeavor. In 2004, amid growing scrutiny over the financial transparency and accountability of ministries like hers, Joyce Meyer proactively addressed concerns surrounding her own salary, reportedly $900,000 per year, and to reassure the public of her ministry's fiscal responsibility, she voluntarily took a pay cut. This move coincided with the disclosure of her ministry's total annual budget, which stood at approximately $30 million. As such, the ministry reported revenues topping $104 million in 2023, largely from cash donations. Expenses, though, continued ballooning upward as well. For that year, total expenses hit approximately $122 million and yielded an operating deficit of about negative $18 million. That operating deficit really put into question some sustainability and long-term viability issues among supporters and critics alike. Behind the gleaming facade of Joyce Meyer Ministries, a staggering price tag revealed a crippling burden, but was it just the beginning of a far greater struggle? Trials and tribulations, the storms within Joyce Meyer Ministries. As we delve into the story of Joyce Meyer Ministries, the early months of 2020 were filled with challenges and opportunities for growth. The beginning of 2020 was fraught with uncertainty. The world was dealing with the first waves of the COVID-19 pandemic, a crisis that would test not only individuals but entire organizations. The pandemic posed some unprecedented challenges for Joyce Meyer Ministries. With social distancing in full swing and large gatherings prohibited, suddenly Joyce's conferences, such a vital part of her outreach, were in jeopardy. The ministry had been built on live events where thousands would gather to hear Joyce speak, share testimonies, and worship together. This sudden shutdown put noticeable pressure on the operations and community of the ministry. To this challenge, Joyce, along with her team, adapted very quickly to the new reality. They began using technology to continue reaching out to their audience. They started virtual events to which all their followers could connect from the safety of their homes. This was more than a stopgap, it was a fundamental evolution in how Joyce Meyer Ministries engaged with its audience. It opened avenues in reaching out to those who may be faced with geographical or financial deterrents from attending the events physically. One of the more prominent sermons, Walking by Faith, preached in February of 2020. It was important to prove trust in God during times of uncertainty, a theme that began to resonate even more poignantly as the crisis progressed. But not all the tension on the ministry was a product of outside forces. Inside, discussions were held on how best to negotiate this new landscape while staying true to the mission. There was a concern among its members about how to keep the identity of the ministry amidst the changing times. Questions cropped up, such as how to engage a community that was built on and fostered face-to-face interaction when this was no longer an option. As Joyce struggled through the various plights of her health issues, audiences began to notice her absences from their television sets. For many years, Joyce had been a staple in homes around